The Obama portraits show us that African American artists have truly attained a level of star power. Both of the portraits that we're looking at were painted by African American artists, alive and well and working, and both of these paintings are hanging today in the Smithsonian Institution. And of course, everybody knows Barack Obama was our president and Michelle was our first lady. On my visits to see these portraits, there were frequently long lines, particularly to see the image of Barack Obama. Highly anticipated, especially when these portraits were originally shown. Let's take a look at the painter first. Okay. There we go. The painter who did the Barack Obama portrait, to get a little bit of a sense of what he did. And I'm going to suggest what he didn't do because he couldn't do it with Barack Obama. His name is Kehinde Wiley. He was born in LA. He's New York based now, as far as I know. He had already achieved a significant reputation for his really impressive heroic images of African American males who've been cast in the position of old world power figures. What Wiley has been doing has been taking an old master painting that most of us recognize and understand, and then inserting in the place of the original white figure a young modern male dressed in traditional street clothing, like the guy in the painting modeled after Jericho's Charging Horseman on the left, the Kehinde Wiley on our right. The guy is in blue jeans and has a t-shirt on. He shows these figures to us, making it very clear that these are revisions. They're not copies. They're not stealing in that sense, but they are complete reinterpretations. The backgrounds of these paintings usually have inserted kind of textile designs, frequently referencing Rococo, Islamic, maybe West African textiles, but making it very clear this is not a view through a window that is photographically real, although the figure is done in a photographically real style. But rather, this is a revision through the eyes of Kehinde Wiley, giving us a depiction of a young male who is a powerful figure, who is in control, and kind of awakening to his own strength and masculinity. These can be classified as postmodern. Postmodern images may deal with appropriation, that means borrowing, which is going on here, and recasting, which is also going on. What the recasting does is force us to reinterpret the image and to analyze the image in terms of our own cultural values. This is another, and I'm going to suggest this is probably the most famous of Kehinde Wiley's images. I've seen this one, and it's actually located in the Brooklyn Museum of Art. It is based upon David's Napoleon Crossing the Alps, but which was originally painted in 1800. It has been restaged, recast, and again has a textile background. It is a young African American now dressed in camouflage with a bandana that he's wearing. This is based on photos, so there is an element of photorealism in this, of men that Wiley finds on the street, asks them to assume the same pose, and then he will work actually from the photograph to create the finished image. What he claims he's looking for is a black young man with a, quote, alpha male attitude. Someone who has self-confidence and believes in himself, that when recast will kind of challenge the old authority figures found in these old master paintings. He also adds a gold frame to his picture, once again kind of suggesting the original image of the master painting by David, but again completely recast. His pictures are very glossy and do reveal in that way a hyper-realistic quality, a kind of photographic quality, and link him also to the tradition of the photorealists. And another to take a look at, this is after Ang, and it again is a depiction of Napoleon, this time a seated figure contrasted with a relatively young African-American male in the same pose but with street clothing on. Okay, this is the one that we want to focus on. It was done, excuse me, in 2018, and it is Barack Obama's official portrait. He's shown seated in a chair against a field of flowers, and he's almost a kind of floating figure, which gives it a kind of magical quality, I think. The flowers are symbolic of his mixed heritage, which today tends to be true of most of us. We have mixed family lines, mixed histories, and in this case, it's conveyed through the flowers. The chrysanthemums are the official flower of Chicago, and Barack Obama spent time there. The jasmine, which is white, is the flower of Hawaii, which is the home of his childhood. And then the African blue lilies that float in the background make reference to his Kenyan father. So it's a reference to his mixed heritage, his mixed experiences, which he's all bringing to his post as President of the United States. This is not what was expected of an official presidential portrait, and it got consequently very mixed reviews. The Washington Post says this, quote, "This is not what you expect, and that's why it's great." Okay, I'm going to leave it to you if you think this is a great portrait, but I do think in particular it's a timely portrait. I would like to add one thing to the conversation, and that is the chair that Barack Obama is seated on. This does make me think of the importance of chairs, stools, and thrones that appear in the art of the continent of Africa. And I think that Kehinde Wiley was making reference to that. If you look at the arm of the chair also, I'm going to suggest it may allude to the claws of a lion. It's not defined clearly, but I think the suggestion is there, and that would reference some of the chairs, for example, found in the tomb of King Tut. But again, making a reference to the very strong traditions that come out of Africa, its past, and its art. Hey, this is a photo I found of Barack Obama, just to give you a sense. This is pretty good, too, in terms of being accurate. Okay, the portrait of Michelle Obama was done by another painter, Amy Sherald, and she's an artist who also had a working career before the Obama portraits. However, that's when she seemed to become a household name. Her idea, or her emphasis rather, is more about portraits and less about making statements than Kehinde Wiley, but I do think that she is making statements in her pictures. This is her on the left, and this is one of her portraits located on the right with a detail. Today she's based in Baltimore. She creates paintings that deal with identity in society and probably also, more importantly, with expectations that society has for us and the role and behaviors that we should engage in as we go about our lives in social positions. Her style has been described as, quote, stylized naturalism, and I do think that these images, particularly the full portrait that we can see clearly, is highly naturalistic, but also some of the distracting details have been removed so that it does have a stylization and a simplification. She's also well known for using a grayscale. In other words, the skin isn't white, the skin isn't black. The skin coloring is ambiguous, and what she's doing is taking away that reference to race, even though that defines the skin color, even though the features of her subjects may indeed be shown as African American. The people she paints tend to be frontal against a plain background. She often includes props in the composition, and their expressions tend to be cool, calm, and collected, very composed. There are flat areas of color Very simplified, very stylized, and this artist has a really great sense of overall design, often giving us some very bold details. She also conveys an element of narrative that's very compelling in her pictures. I find it difficult to interpret her pictures unless she's helped to explain them. In this particular painting, Miss Everything, which was done in 2014, she explains that the teacup actually derives from a reading of Alice in Wonderland, and I have to assume it's the Tea Party with the Mad Hatter, which would help to place the sitter outside of ordinary reality, outside of time and space. And in that way, gives a kind of alternative to black reality. If we go back again to the skin color, which is in the gray tone range, it makes race ambiguous. I think there's another aspect of this, and that refers to expectations of how we should behave and who we are, expectations held by society. And if you take a look at the teacup and the way it's carefully lifted above the saucer by someone who is wearing gloves, this, I have to believe, is a reference to the way a good lady would behave in past social expectations of American society. My grandmother would look at this and immediately recognize that this is the gesture and behavior of a lady. So I think this is a portrait that deals with understanding who you are and what your reality is, but it is your identity is rather, but also raising questions about how we frame that. These are more, she's really a good artist in terms of design and in color. Her backgrounds tend to be plain. Her figures are highly visible against the background. That's her website. You can go. You can check out more of her work. She often includes props like old-time photographers did that add a narrative content to the image. This is the, I'm going to say, beloved Michelle Obama portrait, also done 2018. It is an image that is highly sophisticated in terms of the overall design, and it has a really cool elegance to it. Michelle has a kind of confidence. As she's seated, turning gently towards us, there are splashes of color on the dress that she's wearing that form diagonal lines that lead us upward directly towards her face. We're slightly below her, which elevates her, but not in a haughty way, so she still remains approachable. Dignified, very human, again created with the grayscale, naturalistic, but also a kind of timeless elegance outside of daily life. If we were in the classroom, I would ask you which of these portraits you prefer. I'm going to have to leave that to you at home to make that decision on your own. With these two portraits, we do mark the end of a very long journey in America for the improvement, I think, of the status of African American artists. I don't think that we're 100% there yet, but I do think the Obama portraits indicate that we are on the way. And with that, I think we'll end.